Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. Getting back to work on the Springfield XDS45 in this video. Last video, I walked through the polishing of the important bits that go in the slide. This video is going to be going through getting everything final cleaned and ready to install on the slide, walk through the reassembly of the slide, and then eventually get to the reassembly of the firearm in order to get this thing ready to take it to the range for a test after all this work I've done. So that being said, going to get a few things moved out of the way and get to work on the slide parts. All right, so first thing I'm going to do before reassembling this is wipe down all the internal parts with some super quick clean gun on a patch, just to make sure everything's cleaned and has a little bit of corrosion prevention and lubricant. It's a micro lubricant built into the parts, so that way we will be good to go. So I'm going to wipe down all the parts and then I'll be back as soon as that's done. All right, everything is wiped down. So first thing I'm going to do is put the striker firing pin assembly together, and that's pretty much just going to be running the pin inside of the cylinder here. It'll come out that way, and that tab will be in the groove, obviously. And then you're going to put the spring from this side over top of it. What you'll want to do is put it, use a lock gunsmithing block or something on those lines, or you can put it in the back of the slide just to hold this, and then you can push down on the spring and then put the little retainer into the grooves of the spring and hold it in place. So I'll go ahead and get that put back together and show you everything once it's done. All right, and here you can see the assembly put back together. You can see how the retainer goes in place underneath the pin. One thing to note is the groove, the opening in the retainer right there, where you need to walk it over top of the striker. Make sure that is opposite the end of the spring, which you can see there, because you don't want that getting caught in there and just causing possible future problems. So that is now assembled, ready to go. Get the block out of the way. Next thing is going to be to grab the extractor, the spring, and the little rubber buffer that is in the middle of the spring. Put that into the side. At the same time, you are going to need to grab your firing pin safety and spring and drop that down the hole that goes in, because this will hold this into place, and you need to hold it kind of all together at the same time when you run the actual pin down here in this hole that holds the extractor in place through that hole. So I'm going to go ahead and kind of get things set up and ready to go and then walk you through it. All right, so you can see I put the spring and buffer in the bore right there. And then as far as the extractor goes, there's this little tab down here that you can see that's on the bottom. So you kind of want to just hook it under and then in the groove, lock it into place, just like so. And then this should compress. You should be able to push it down without a problem. So now that that's like that, you can go ahead and flip it upside down, and your bore is open there to go ahead and drop the spring and safety plunger into the bore. And then you'll have to compress it ever so slightly, push down on this, and then we can go ahead and drive the pin in to the hole right there, and that should retain everything in place. So the pin is right here. I'm gonna grab a punch, get all the parts. Like I said, you'll put it together and you can hold it with one hand on your thumb, holding everything in place, and then drive the pin through. All right, real quick, you can see the safeties there, the plunger, it's being held in by the extractor, and I started the pin from the top, and it's just lightly holding the extractor in place. I'll grab a punch and run it all the way through, but that's the best way to do it, because if you're trying to get it from this side, it's gonna be hard to get it in enough without holding a punch while you're sitting here holding this and whatnot. Do it from the top. Like I said, I just had my thumb holding this in place like this once everything was captive, and then started just hammering the pin in, and now I'm going to drive it in the rest of the way. All right, as you can see, pin is fully seated. You should be able to push on the extractor and feel a little give, and same with the plunger. You should be able to push down on that and feel it move. If that is happening, then you are good to go. So next is going to be to grab the firing pin assembly, slide it in to the bore, run it down like so, and then you just need to grab the rear cover plate, and you'll push down on the tab here to allow you to slide the cover plate in, and that will hold everything in place. All right, and if you did everything right, this is what it's going to look like. You should be reassembled. You should be able to pull back on the striker and it'll move, but it shouldn't come through unless you push down on the plunger safety there. If you push down on that and push forward, then that should come through the bore. But right now it's not, because I'm not pushing down on it. So that's how you're going to test. Hard to do with just one hand, but you want to be able to push up on this. You can see it's blocked right now. If you push up on it with that depressed, you should see the pin come through. So I'm gonna go ahead and test that real quick, make sure it's working, and then go from there. All right, and there you can see the striker / firing pin is popping through because I have that plunger depressed. If I pull it back, the plunger just re-engaged, and again, can't push it through. So that safety is functioning as it should. So next is me to grab the lower, and these last couple parts here, get everything lubed and ready for reassembly. All right, and as you can see, put the barrel back in, put the recoil spring back in, did wipe down like a little bit of oil on the top of the slide, or the barrel where it's going to interfere with the slide, as you can see. So next is going to be using a little grease, and what I'm going to do is grease the locking block area here, put a tiny little bit on the plunger where that's going to ride on what would be the shark fin on a Glock, as well as just a tiny little bit on the striker, a tiny little bit in the disconnector channel here, as well as a little bit on each end of the slide rails here, where that's going to go onto the actual frame. So I want that just for the best operation possible. So I'm gonna go ahead, use a little Lucas gun grease, get all that stuff ready to go, and then put this thing back together. All right, you can see a little bit of grease in the spots I was just talking about. So now it's just a matter of putting the slide on the frame, putting the takedown lever back into place, and seeing how it shoots. All right, reassembled, and I can definitely say I'm very impressed, with how much smoother the trigger feels. Way better than it has ever been. You still have somewhat of a long pull on an initial pull, but it is much crisper. It's you don't feel that grittiness. It's not draggy. It breaks really nice now. So all that work, definitely worth it. Last things I need to do before the range, I'm going to grab some dummy rounds and a mag, run a few through and just see how everything cycles. And once that's done, it is going to be time to do a little drop testing just to make sure nothing has been messed with the work that I've done. Shouldn't have been, because I didn't do anything real crazy other than just do some polish work. But definitely want to be safe before this thing is carried or taken to a range. All right, just went multiple times cycling rounds through it, and it's a 5-round mag, so I'd put 5 in, put the mag in, rack the slide to chamber around, and then put another one back in there. So I was doing 6 rounds at a time, because these they tell you in the instructions with the XDSs, do not just manually plop around into the barrel, do it that way, using the magazine. So anyway, 6 rounds, racked it multiple times, went through it, all 6 rounds, everything ejected perfectly, no fails to feed, with me just pulling back and releasing the slide like it would in normal action. So all good there. Last thing is to do some drop testing and make sure it is still safe for carry and drop. All right, drop test complete. Did basically all 6 angles, side, top, bottom, front, and back. And all it is just, I've got just a concrete floor, just a thin thing of cardboard, and then a double layer of towel, so it's not really like that much padding. But you can see the imprints from every time it dropped. So, but anyway, functioned fine. There were no, it didn't fire anytime. Every time I picked it up after dropping it, pulled the trigger, and it was still set. So we are good to go there. So next things with this are going to be to get it to the range. All right, and that's where I'm going to end this one. One thing I did forget to mention in that last segment is when I did the drop testing, I did have, the magazine full of dummy rounds. I mean, these aren't anywhere near as heavy as a regular round, but anything to try and keep it, what a normal weight balance would be for when you're dropping it, because if you have no mag in there with nothing, it's going to tend to want to go to the top just because it's top heavy. So anyway, that being said, next video on this firearm will be from the range, doing the full, evaluation once all is said and done. Not sure if that's going to be my next video. I might have something in between. Just depends on when I can get to the range. So that being said, if you like what you're seeing and you want to follow along, please hit like, please hit subscribe. Please hit the notification bell. If you have any questions or comments, please leave them in the comment section below. I do review them. I will reply. I do have a second YouTube channel devoted to automotive stuff. If that's something that interests you, there's a link in the description of this video. I also have a Rumble channel where I'm also posting my firearm content. If you're on Rumble, then I'd appreciate it if you check out my page and like it there. There's a link in the description as well. That being said, thank you very much for watching, and have a great day.